We had 25K in revenue. The problem is, how much of that was profit? Yo, what up? It's me, Toby, your boy, and this is going to be a how much money I made in my first year of Amazon KDP video. Hopefully, if you want your first year of Amazon KDP to be a lot better than mine was, then this is for you. And I'm gonna start with the dashboard because I'm not trying to string you along, so let's just go ahead and take a look at the dashboard. And then basically I'll share everything that I learned with you so that you can have a much better experience than I did getting started with KDP. Amazon KDP, for whatever reason, they only let you do a 3-month custom range. So I'll go with you from the very beginning of my journey. June 2022 was the first month that I didn't publish. I started in July 2022. So we'll go 3 months, July, August, and September. Gives you 90 days, so it cuts off the first 2 days of July. But in my first 3 months of publishing, I did $1,600, which was really cool. It was my first online sale of my life. So as we go, let's just keep a tally to the nearest number. And then we are going to move to the next set of 3 months. Now this was an exciting period. We went to 7,727. So in the first 6 months of publishing, I had made almost $10,000. And just so you know, I'll show you my brand that I was in at the time. This is what the brand was. So mid-content book, word search brand. In my first year, I published a total of, I think it was 15 books. You're free to check out this brand if you want to, because I'll get into the details later of why I do not publish under this brand anymore, but it's a great learning experience. So let's go on from there. We'll start in January of 2023. So in the next 3 months, we made 2,200, not so good. And the reason we dipped so hard was one, my health. I couldn't work very much, so I wasn't able to publish new books. And then secondly, as we'll talk about more in depth later when we talk about the major problems with my first year and how you can avoid them too, is that most of my money came off of this Cozy Christmas word search book. So it's a seasonal book, meaning as soon as Christmas is over, people stop buying it. And then the last 3 months was actually a pretty good 3 months. So in those last 3 months, we did 9,475. Okay, so we did 21,000 bucks in our first year. Now that's pretty cool, right? But the problem is, how much of that was profit? Let's go just a little further. So, because honestly, the first couple of months of publishing, I only had published 2 books, and they were like test books to just see if I could publish. And yeah, there was almost no money that came from them. So let's extend this through August of this year. Another 4,000. So really in my first full year of publishing, it was closer to 25. But when you calculate expenses such as ad costs, which I'm not going to show you my ads dashboard because I didn't have it pulled up already, and I don't want you to see all the books details. But we spent about 22,500 bucks. So ultimately, how much profit did we make in year 1? About 3,000 bucks. Clearly something worked well because we made, here, let me pull up this silly guy, and we're gonna start explaining some of the details of what I did well and what I did wrong. And I've got my notes here on the side, so feel free to follow along if you want to. We had 25K in revenue and 3K bottom line profit. How the heck does this happen? Well, let's talk about the costs. Now, this is gonna get a little tactical for you, this video, by now, as you know, if you're still watching, it's gonna be super valuable to you because I spent that's $22,000 in the first year. I spent that so you didn't have to. So pay attention if you wanna learn a little bit about marketing and advertising, especially if you're a KDP publisher. This will be priceless for you. So, costs, what did I learn? If you're wondering how the heck do you spend that much, there was ads, then there was labor. Because of the health issues that I've undergone over the past 4.5 years, I've only been able to work on average since I started the publishing. That first year, I averaged about an hour and a half a day. So what's that? An hour and a half, 1.5 times 365, but that's approximately 500, a little over 500 hours. So that's pretty cool that we're able to make 25K in revenue with only 500 hours of work, but that's because I paid for a ton of labor. Okay, so I have a team. I read the book called The E-Myth. This was one of my biggest blessings in the first year. I had a mentor who was PNC Bank's operations manager, I think nationally at one point. And he said, Tobes, if you can't work very much, you need to learn about systems. So I read The E-Myth. This talks about how there's a difference between entrepreneurs. So it's getting a little messy over here, but you've got entrepreneurs, which we'll call E. That's what the E stands for in E-Myth. And then you've got technicians. So an entrepreneur is the manager, the visionary. The technician is the person who actually does the tasks themselves. I ask myself, if I can only work 1.5 hours a day, but there's 10 hours a day of work to be done, how do I bridge that gap? And that's where creating systems and hiring technicians come in. So I had a team of virtual assistants, also known as VAs, who did hundreds and hundreds of hours of work for me at a fairly reasonable wage on average, working with people in the Philippines. I have a great team. Most of them are from the Philippines. On average, it'll cost about $5 an hour. And if you come up with good systems, then they can just follow those systems. So I made training videos, SOPs, which is standard operating procedures, so written and visual, that they can just go step 1, step 2, step 3. Let's say for formatting a book. Well, I'd do it myself until I understood, then I'd make these systems, and then I'd hire a VA. Okay, so we've got ads, we've got labor for cost, and then there's ancillary costs like, I don't need to change colors, but I like it because we're talking about snacks, baby. So I paid for snacks and office supplies and stuff like that. That should be about everything that I spent on my first year of business. But it was so ridiculously expensive. And here was the biggest problem that I found. Here's the rookie mistakes. Follow along here because this is really big. If you're, please listen. I wish I had known these things at the beginning so badly. The biggest mistakes me and my team made, and particularly me because I'm the one who's in charge. We started with a low margin on these books that we were publishing under Blueberry Books. The margin was approximately $3.24 per sale. So what does that mean? That means at the end of the day, if I sell a book for, let's say it's $8.99 after printing costs and everything, this is what enters back into my bank account, into my hands. Now, the problem with this is, one, it's super low ticket. So ad spend is really tight, meaning my customer acquisition cost cannot exceed $3.24. Otherwise, I'm exactly at break even and it's a wash, right? Nobody makes any money. Sad day. And it's a really competitive market, which the word search market is. So I spent, of that 25,000, I think it was approximately like 19,000 was in ads. So the vast majority was just ad spend at a really low margin equals no profit. So if you're publishing, do not play the race to zero game. I don't regret it because I learned, but if someone had told me, I would have been much better off. So the second rookie mistake that I had made, and this is another really big one, was that I published almost exclusively seasonal books. Do not do this. The problem is, remember when I had that like 9K 3-month span? That was a summer book. And the time when I had a really good span during Christmas, you spend a ton on ads, and this goes for both books. You spend a ton on ads, and then after 3 months, your book has ranked well organically, woohoo! But then the season is over. Why is nobody buying? And you're back to square zero. Not even square one, square zero. You're making like almost no money at all for the 9 other months of the year. And then you have to go back to the beginning of the vicious cycle, spend a lot on ads to rank, and then you're making a tiny bit of money for 3 months. So with a perfect storm of a low margin and seasonal books, I didn't make like any money, as you see. So what do you do instead, right? Oh, and the last thing, I did not have continued education and application based on that education. I find that the easy thing for me as a creative person to do is just get a little education and then skip straight to the creative application. I would just get creative with things. I'd learn the basics of publishing and basics of marketing, and I'd jump straight over to the creative, and I wouldn't continue to do these 2 steps. Get educated and apply. Educate, apply. Educate and apply. So all of this was terrible. I get to the end of that first year. I crunched the numbers. This is only in October when I really crunched the numbers and found out that profit was like 3K, right? So I go, what the heck do I do? I just spent thousands and thousands of dollars and a year and a half of my life, by the time it was October, working towards this business model, and it's not working. What do I do? So I had this like absolute pit of my stomach moment. I called up a couple of my friends. I was like, I am not an entrepreneur. I'm just an artist. There's no way I can do this. And the 2 that I spoke to gave me a great pep talk. So I decided to dream a little. I decided to keep going. And what I found, Alex Hormozy talks about this, and it was entirely true. So see this little graph here? This is the beginning of any venture right here. You're highly optimistic, and your optimism grows, and it's uninformed optimism. And then at some point you start realizing, oh, this is hard. this is really tricky. I don't know if I want to stick with this. This is expensive. This is going to take work. And at some point you either choose to get out here and go to the beginning of a new venture, which is what a lot of people do, which is what I did for the first 20 years of my life, 22 years of my life, really. And you just go through this cycle of uninformed optimism to starting a new venture. But if you stick with it, you're going to go, oh, this is actually way harder than I thought. Oh, you know, for me, it was margins really are trash. How do I get to 30K in a year, or 25K in a year, and make no money? And then at the bottom here, you have the dark night of the soul. Sad. But then, as soon as you push through here, if you keep pushing through, and this is where I was in October when I called my friends. If you keep pushing through, you'll start to see a little momentum. I'm learning things. I'm starting to make sense of this. I'm actually seeing some traction. And before long, you're where I am right now, which is informed. This is the best place to be, by the way, in my experience. And I've only been here once in my entire life, which is today. Informed optimism. Now, why am I an informed optimist? Well, I'll show you my dashboard for the past 3 months, okay? Before I show you my dashboard, I want to show you what I did. So what I did was I said, okay, I'm at this pit, but I'm going to try making a book with high margin. Guys, learning things is so simple. If you take the time, and I'm preaching to myself right now because I never do it, but when I do, I'm always glad I did. And you'll see in a second with the dashboard. I said, what if I made a book with increased margin that was evergreen instead of seasonal, meaning it'll sell 12 months out of the year. And this goes for things that aren't just books too, whatever your market is. And the last thing is that I continue to get education and apply it, then what would happen? And I'll show you what happens. I published one book a little over 2 months ago. And this is the result. I'm such a jerk. If you want to find out the rest, then go to part 2 because I'm a really new YouTuber and I need more engagement. So I'll probably put it up here or something like that. All right, thanks guys. Peace. What is this even? Whee!